is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 165. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at ByCASimmons, and at Night Sports Now. We're here to make you feel better about the Baylor loss. We're not going to do that. We're here to talk about how UCF can maybe get the season back on track. We've got some things we're going to dive into there. We'll do a brief preview of the Kansas game. We kind of felt like this is just kind of a reset podcast. Like, UCF needs to reset its season. We need to reset as a podcast. And we'll just do that because we don't have a 5-star review question today. We need some more questions. So send in your 5-star reviews, send in those questions. Please do that. That'd be good.
Yeah,
Christian, how are you?
I've never been worse. As far as the 5-star review questions, I've seen like a couple comments from people now who are like, I left you a Spotify review like question because we have, you can on Spotify, you can leave a question that way. We haven't gotten any in a while. So I don't know if that's just like not working or what. So I would discourage you from leaving questions that way. I think the best ways are on Apple, where we actually like get a review from it. Or if you want to leave a comment on YouTube, I will accept that as well.
Yeah.
So,
I've also, people in the past have like DM'd me questions. And I mean, if you want, I don't think my DMs aren't open. But yeah, you can just tweet it.
My DMs are open, as some of you have taken advantage of, both for good and bad things. So feel free to send me questions. I'm very bad at checking it. I'm trying to get better. Like I'll open it up and like someone will have like 4 weeks prior been like, I have a question. And I'm like, well, that's
well,
so here.
Your question's out of date now.
This is me committing to being better about it. So
I
literally, Bailey, just on Saturday, I checked for the first time in a while, and someone had asked me if the lights were working at the Villanova game, and I was like, yeah. Probably not going to reply now because that would be kind of lame to be like they were working 3 weeks ago, but yeah. So
I had that thought the other day. I was like, I wonder how the I was like, wait, it's daytime. What, they're not going to do one of the light shows? That was a stupid thought that I had in the middle of that game.
I would have loved. Actually, that would have been the only thing that could have made the Baylor train wreck even better. Is if like they're blowing the lead and then randomly in the middle of the day they're like lights up, lights down.
at 5:30 in the afternoon, the sun is still out.
Yeah.
So let's jump into, we're not talking about Baylor anymore. We don't want to do things we missed from Baylor because you might have rewatched that game because you're a sicko. Did you rewatch it? Okay.
No,
yeah,
I couldn't. I really couldn't.
I was not going to. I didn't even see I didn't watch highlights or anything. There was like certain things because I was in the stadium and I was like, there were things that I was like, what happened on that play? But I don't really have the stomach to go back and actually watch and see what happened. I'll just be like, oh, okay, well, we'll never know.
We were talking earlier. I pulled up the broadcast on my TV to figure out who started O-line and when Kittler left, because I completely missed in real time that Kittler left with injury. Just absolutely missed that watching the game. And like just even having the game on, like just to look at the O-line was like too much for me. Like it was really awful. I'm not gonna be able to watch that game until they've won a couple. I can't go back to that until I know.
I'll never watch that game.
I will eventually because I watch all the losses because I'm a freak. But I for now I can't. I just can't.
I also, so it's like a similar thing where like I was on Instagram earlier and I was scrolling and like Instagram's algorithms weird will show you like photos from like days ago. I got the one that was like locker room is set for our 3:30 kick against Baylor, and I saw it and it gave me like the reaction I had was just kind of like
awful.
Made me upset.
We've been talking about like UCF's lost a lot of games in my lifetime that have made me want to scream. And under Malzahn these last few years there have been like many, but many memorable ones. But I almost always snap out of it after a day or two. Like, I'm like, okay, that really sucked. On to the next week. Like, I'm just not snapping out of this one. And I said to you before we started, I feel like a big part of it is that, like, last year when UCF lost to, I don't know, like East Carolina, or when they lost to Tulsa in 2019, like games like that, or Navy even last year, I'm always
East Carolina might be a bad example last year because they played Cincy the week after.
Nope, because I went on our post-game pod that week and was like, they're going to beat Cincy. I literally called it. Like, I just, since they were in the AAC and they mostly played teams they were much better than, I would be like, wow, that sucked. We'll get them next week. And instead, I'm sitting here now and I'm like, it could very like possibly, I'm not saying it's my prediction, but it could very seriously possibly be a month before we see UCF win another football game. They have at Kansas, a bye, at Oklahoma, West Virginia, who's now 4-1 and just beat TCU and is not at all the team they were supposed to be. Like, it could be a while before we see UCF win again. And the possibility of that is making me want to cry. So it's weighing on me like a very heavy weight. So it's weighing on me like a weight. Wild.
That's good.
Yeah.
So let's try to figure this out. How can UCF get their season back on track? And you came to me with this idea instead of doing like a traditional preview podcast. We were going to do this. And my first reaction was like, I really don't know. And I was like, I don't know that they will. So as we talk about all these things, I'm going to try to like talk as if I can see them happening. But I'm just very, very worried that this season is just going absolutely nowhere. So with all that, we've got our first topic within this topic is to basically it's a big culture thing. Like reaffirm the culture. If there is a good culture, maintain it. I don't really know where the culture is and where we lie on that right now. It's kind of just hard to tell, obviously, from the outside, and the access to this program is like non-existent, essentially.
Unless you're 247 Sports, then you get to embed with the team with unfettered access, but it's fine.
Yeah, but they need their leaders to step up, and I think we'll get to JRP in a second, but just they need their leaders to be leaders, and they need to not like the coaches cannot lose the locker room, and I don't know if they're even close to it. I don't know if they have already. I don't really know where everybody stands, but that is the way that this season really goes. This season finishes 3-9 if they all just are like this sucks. Like
you heard it here first. UCF is going 3-9 in 2023.
I said if the culture has already gone and they just can't get it back, they will go 3-9.
Look, of all the stuff that there is to worry about, from that the defense appears to not really be able to hang at the P5 level, at least not in the fourth quarter of last game, to the quarterback situation, to everything. Nothing scares me more right now than the idea of the locker room sort of falling away, the culture getting messed up, losing the locker room, all that type of stuff. Because especially for younger UCF fans, like the question gets posed a lot when people are looking at UCF. They're like, how did that team win the Fiesta Bowl, go 0-12 2 years later, then go undefeated the year after that? Like it's a good question, because what a strange thing to have happened. And the answer, honestly, is that UCF lost a couple bad games early in 2015. They were not as good as they thought they were going to be. They were never going to be like a championship team, but they were better than 0-12. That was probably like a 5 or 6 win team. And what happened was they lost those 2 early games, and the locker room just quit. They were just done. And they quit on O'Leary. That was part of what led to his retirement. I'm putting in air quotes midway through that season. They went through the motions. They were done. And that is my number one fear for this team. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying that they've now lost 2 in a row. They blew a 35-7 lead at home and just seemed naturally rattled by that. They've got, like I just said, 3 straight games coming up, none of which look like wins. They could win those games, but none of them look like wins right now. You've got Javon Baker on social media kind of like blaming the fans and saying, we saw you leave early and that hurts us, blah, blah, blah.
But then saying that's not what he said.
And then saying that's not what he said after. Okay, so there's been a whole deleted tweet saga on Twitter, because then Kobe Hudson appeared to then like call out Javon for that tweet, and then that got deleted, and then Javon started like chain tweeting about how people don't understand what he meant. Whole thing, stuff like that, worrying. And I just, and another thing that adds to this fear for me of if the locker room just falls apart is a lot of these guys are seniors or are not going to be back next year. A lot of the offense, a lot of the defense, and it feels like it's almost easier to check out if you're just like, hey, we weren't what we thought we were going to be. I'm now just going through the motions and I'm getting out of here. I have no idea if that's going to happen. I'm not predicting that, but if UCF can bounce back, they can win games. This is how they don't. This is how this season becomes a nightmare, is if that locker room just falls apart based off of this.
That gave me a worse feeling, because you said like they're seniors and like anyway, and it's like if they're, my first thought was like, okay, well then if there is a culture problem with these seniors, like with like the upperclassmen, I guess, then like okay, we can reset it next year, and these guys are going to be gone. We'll reset it with the younger guys. They'll develop a good culture. But yeah, now that you say that, they could just really check out, and then this season will just
would be bad.
And then I guess there still is the potential then next year to say, all right, we're resetting the culture because those guys are gone. But I don't know. I'm in a bad mindset.
Hopefully the team isn't. We said I
don't know. It looks like, it kind of feels like they are, but I don't know. We don't know.
It does. And that's kind of where I started thinking about this. And it's natural, because again, like one of the most embarrassing losses in program history, they're not going to be coming out of that like, okay, let's go get lunch. Like, they're probably gonna be in a bad headspace, but I prefer that to them not caring. But the issue is that after they lost to Kansas State, we talked about how they just seemed not rattled by that. They seemed motivated. They were like, we proved that we can hang with these teams. It's time to go out there and show that we can do better than this. They were really amped up for the Baylor game. After this Baylor game, everyone just looked shell-shocked. Like in post-game access, even in the accesses today and on Sunday, like everyone just seems out of it a little bit. And if I'm the coaching staff right now, like my number one fear or my number one thing to keep an eye on this week isn't even like, how do we stop Kansas or how do we get a win? It is literally just, how do we make sure that these players stay bought in how do we make sure that this loss isn't something that they just can't shake off and that things just spiral from here? Because that is, listen, UCF proved now they lost badly, and I'm never going to get over it for as long as I live in my entire life. I will be 80 years old and barely able to speak, and we'll be talking about the 2023 Baylor game and how I will never let it go. But they proved in both the Kansas State game and Baylor game that they do have the talent to compete in the Power 5. That's clear. You know, you can't go up 35-7 if you don't have talent. So we know they can win some of these games that are left. It's just, to me, it's a mental thing at this point, and that's my number one fear.
Yeah, and I like you mentioned some guys like looking shell-shocked and just sounding like, even in the days since, like I went and watched Gus Malzahn's press conference today. I did not feel good coming out of it. Like,
nope, me neither.
He just kind of was just like, you know, I don't really know what I expected from him, because it kind of was what I expected, I guess, but it didn't do anything to inspire me and to feel any confidence in them going on the road to Kansas and beating them.
What would your message be? You're now Gus Malzahn. What's your message to the team? How do you get them to stay locked in?
I'm
Ask the kingdom for more money. I don't know. Like, what do you like? What's your plan?
Forget about last week. Just burn it.
That's
what you have to do at this point. Like, you can't dwell on it anymore. I said, they have the 24-hour rule, but like,
that's
I don't
not
know.
true though. That's like when players say, like, "Oh, I don't listen to the media." When
I would feel like it's like, article. Remember that feeling that you felt after that game. Don't make sure that you don't feel it again. Like, you have the control over that.
Interesting. Okay. I've never been a coach, so I'm gonna say I think I would go the other way.
Either.
I know. I said that like I'm like Bailey, of course, much head coaching experience. I feel like I would almost, and maybe it's just the way I am, but I feel like I would come back and be like, "Hey guys, big news! You're the laughing stock of college football right now. Like, social media is, haha, look at what happened to UCF. Like, screw them all. Let's go show them next week how wrong they are." Like, I feel like I would be like, you know, you got one shot to show everyone that, you know, you're good and this isn't a thing. But I don't know. Maybe it's better to just say, let's never talk about it. Let's bury this game and go practice. But I would love to know how practice goes this week, because I think that you're going to know more about how the rest of the season is going to go based on Tuesday than you're probably going to know based on Saturday, which is a scary spot to be in.
Yeah.
This is such an uplifting, like, this is just, I'm feeling so good.
I don't know how it's supposed to feel like good. Like, I don't know.
No, there's problems.
It's crazy.
I will say that, all right, optimism time. Let's do it. Not really though, because I'm stressed, but I will say that we did a podcast a little similar to this in 2021 after the first Navy loss, because I remember that happened and it was like
first Navy loss.
Man, that's bad. I wasn't even like saying that to rub in the second one. That's how I was referring to it. Yikes. And after that game happened, it was like, oh, UCF's going 4-8 or 5-7. And our post-game pod, we were like, we didn't do a post-game pod. We actually canceled it because it was that bad. It was like a day of mourning. And it was like, is UCF even going to be able to make it to a bowl? Like, this is terrible. Everything's off the rails. And then things turned out mostly okay.
Yeah, and I had thought about that earlier. I was like, this podcast feels similar to that one, where it's like, it's still early in the season. I don't know. It's just the road back is a lot harder. Like, you have Kansas, you have Oklahoma, you have West Virginia, and then, I mean, even the November, like the games that we look at, we're like, yeah, they should win those games. I can't feel 100% confident right now. So it's like it's a scary road ahead, and they are going to have, like, they have very little room for error to get back to bowl eligibility.
I do think that my take right now on where the season ends, like where we're sitting at the end of November, is I think it's exactly where we ended in 2021. I think things are going to be mostly okay. I think that anyone's dreams of 9-3 or even 8-4 are probably out the window. But I do think they'll be 7-5 or 6-6, which is what a lot of us thought they were going to be anyway. It's just, I don't think any of us ever imagined they would get there in this incredibly painful way. And the schedule is kind of front loaded with good teams. We're realizing now that we see what teams have, and it might be a situation where they have to lose a couple more here before things lighten up, which is going to suck. And that's why it goes back to the locker room for me. It's like the wins are on the schedule. You just need to hold out for them, you know? That's
the thing. And that was the silver lining for me, was it's like, as awful as that was, and as bad as it was to collapse late in that Kansas State game, like there was some alternate reality where they win both of those games. Like they were good enough to win those games, and they really just collapsed in on themselves in a lot of ways. So yes, it's scary. I mean, you have some tough opponents ahead, but also you have shown that you can hang. So just clean up the things you need to clean up, and they could. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I've been trying not to be too. I don't say if I've been trying not to be too harsh, because I feel like I have been, but I've been trying not to feel too down, because it's like, yeah, they're 3-2, which kind of sucks. It's like they could legitimately be 5-0 or 4-1. Should be 4-1 at least.
Yep.
But there is a chance they go out and beat Kansas. I'm not going to say there's no way they beat Kansas. I think they can beat Kansas. I might not predict them to win, but I think they beat Kansas. That would be 4-2. I don't think they'll beat Oklahoma, but then I know West Virginia has been better than expected. I still think coming back home, I think they could beat West Virginia. And then there's a month
not
of November
with these lame students who don't care about UCF football.
Yeah, remove one of the student sections. What are we going to? I don't want to get into it.
We'll be getting into a tweet of the week. Don't worry.
All of people's solutions though to this problem that happens everywhere, but it's just we'll get there. We'll get there in the end. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it, but we will, I guess. But yeah, no, I guess the thing is if they can beat Kansas, and I guess this is kind of an obvious statement, but if they beat Kansas, I will feel so much better because then I'll be like, okay, they might not beat Oklahoma, but I feel like they'll have a chance against West Virginia. They'll probably beat Cincinnati. Then Oklahoma State hasn't then November sets up well for them to finish with 6 or 7 wins, and I'll feel good because I said 6 or 7 wins all along. I'll be happy. But the way they're getting there right now, if that's the end destination, cool. But the way they're getting there is very annoying.
It's very dumb. I think that's and it's funny because I was about to say it's exactly what I said on the podcast last week, but it was assuming a Baylor win and a Kansas losses. You go into the Oklahoma game 4-2. 4-2 is a respectable record. Like that's nothing to scoff at. That makes that game look like it has some kind of weight to it. So it's fine and like you just said, I don't want to paint the picture that it's like, thank you everyone for coming to the funeral of the 2023 UCF football season. They're going to lose to Kansas by 9 touchdowns and it'll be terrible. Like they absolutely could go beat Kansas. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. I mean, Kansas might not have their quarterback. Of course, UCF might still not, who knows, but Kansas is a lot better than they were in the old days, but it's still a team UCF can beat. So I don't want to act like there's no shot. It's just the margin for error is freaking thin now. And if there's just so many more opportunities, I just always worry when teams go on losing streaks, how quickly things unravel. And if they do go lose to Kansas and then to Oklahoma, it's like, where are we at locker room wise? Are we just toast? And that's when we can start talking about, hey, I think it is time to panic, you know?
Yeah.
I'm still less in a state right now of panic and more just absolute furious that they did that. Like, I really do think that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, I think you even said it on the post game. You were like, it's not even about what this means for like the rest of the season or the future. It's just like I'm so annoyed that this was a thing that had to happen because that's what it is. Like if they get to 6 or 7 wins in the end, I will say, okay, well that's what I thought all along. But they very clearly, and it will still feel like, wow, they really could have won 8 or 9 because of how the early conference slate went. Yeah, and I don't know. I thought Kansas State was obviously the better team, but they were in that game late. It's the Baylor game that's going to be the one that you'll never. I'll never get over it. It's going to suck.
But it frustrates me because it feels like we're just so many years in now to just what ifs, right? Like last year it was just don't lose to Navy, and like I mean we had 2 games to go in the regular season last year, and I was 100% confident they were going to the Cotton Bowl. Like not even a doubt in my brain. They had 2 very bad teams left, and then they had a conference championship game against a team that they'd beaten on the road. That they were going to get. They would have been at home. Yeah. And then they lose to not Kansas. I'm already talking about next week. They lose to Navy to make that a road game. They almost lose to USF, which would have been horrendous. Then they get just beat up on. But it's like I'm so.
I wanted the staff fired during that USF game. I was rough for heads for the USF game. So.
That game was still worse to watch. Like the Baylor game is more embarrassing, but like I stopped watching the USF game. I know we talked about it at the time, and if you're listening, then you know, but it's like I literally shut off the TV and I went to my room and I laid face down on my bed and just like I turned my phone off and I was just like I can't. Like I was just so sick to my stomach. I walked down to the concourse.
I think we talked about that. I walked down to the concourse and was like still kind of like listening to the broadcast, but like also just
we're trading stories of like what we did for UCF's like worst losses, and we're talking about stuff that's all happened in the last like 7 games. Like it's just like that's where we're at. But
all right, anyway. we got to get back on track. You like just the same way UCF does, and how can they do that? Number 2, get John. I can't believe I'm saying this. Get John Rice Plumlee back sooner rather than later, and I don't mean rush him back because it feels like that's what they're doing, and it's already bothering me. Because I don't think he's like this elite player that you need to rush back and play at 80%. Because
I say rush him back.
I don't.
I say rush him back. And here's why. Because as someone who was a huge Mikey Keene fan last year, I'd like to see John Rice Plumlee look bad and further cement my point. No, I'm just kidding. That's not the reason at all. I actually am kind of in the team of rush him back at this point because it kind of almost ties into the whole culture thing for me. Is JRP is a leader on this team. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. I like him a lot more as a leader after reading that 247 Sports article. If you guys did get a chance to read that, he gave this like fantastic speech going to the Kansas State game. And, you know, your quarterback is always a leader. Last year it was a little different just because of all the, it was a quarterback competition basically kind of the whole season. And I think that him returning can really light a fire under the team. And I think that it can also give them something to play for that they maybe don't have if this team is just a continuation of last week. And I also just think that say that JRP plays against Kansas and they win, then narratives. Then we can start talking about, well, yeah, UCF started 0-2, but they didn't have John Rice Plumlee. They were playing with their backup quarterback, and it kind of makes things feel not as crazy as they do if this continues on. You know what I mean?
All of that might be true, but if they rush him back and he's out there and hobbled around and they're not playing well and they're not winning, then what's the point?
But I'm not saying rush him back like he's been cleared. So at this point, it's just what percent he is. Like, I don't think there's a reality where he goes like last year it's not a repeat of that, where they just had no other option. They were down big and put him in against Tulane, and he literally was like hopping around on one foot. Like, he's been cleared. He can play football. Like,
he obviously had to have been cleared back then, though.
Was he though? Like,
I have to be. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, like, he was cleared in quotes. Like, the man could not walk, and they were like, "This isn't working. Get out there." So it's like, I can't. If he has, and listen, like, if let me clarify what I'm saying. If he has a week of practice where it looks like he just isn't mobile at all, or he might re-aggravate it, that not to me is that. I'm not saying rush him back under all costs. Yeah. I'm saying that if he gets through practice fine, and they're like, he's probably around 80-85%, I'm okay with switching back to him at that point.
Because we have to remember, like, all of the intangible stuff, him being a leader, what a boost that could be is great. But when you think about what it is that he does well on the football field, a lot of that is the mobility, and he's coming off of a knee injury that he suffered, 4 weeks ago, maybe?
Oh, he's a much better passer than he was last year. He had some crisp throws against Boise. I'm not worried.
State, yeah. He was better. We said it was his best game that he's played. But if he can't do what he does that makes him dynamic, I'm going to be afraid. Like, I'm not going to think it's going to be that big of a difference. Like, yeah, I guess it'll be a boost to morale, but I don't think like it'll be that big of a leap over Timmy.
Yeah,
Timmy's
made some mistakes late. Take.
No, and it's not that I'm saying, like, I'm just saying don't rush him back if he's really not going to be 100%. I do agree that they need to get him back sooner. Like, hopefully they get him back sooner rather than later, just for the sake of all the things you said. But if he's not going to be in a position where he can do all the things that he needs to do, he's not, like, and especially in that state, he's not that much of a difference from Timmy. Timmy's been able to make plays. It's just been the late game stuff where, and even I wouldn't even put the game on Timmy, this blown lead either. Like, it's not even him, I wouldn't say.
What I would put combination on Timmy of things is that, and no, it's not on him. I saw some of that on, but it's like, that's just a tale as old as time. It's like, and we do the same thing with JRP. It's like, it's always the quarterback's fault if they're losing. It's always the quarterback's. It's their fault if they're winning. It's their fault if they're losing. But I think what we noticed, especially on Saturday, is Timmy got rattled when they were blowing that lead, and that's to be expected. I mean, he doesn't have a ton of experience in recent times starting a quarterback. I mean, that all came 2 years ago for him, but I do think that it's kind of funny. It's like John Rice Plumlee, it's hard to tell exactly what we have with him this year because we only saw him for 2 games, but like, he wasn't making dumb mistakes as much. Now, he still was making some, but I think about, like, I texted this to you earlier, that it's almost like, for me, there are situations where there will be a play that breaks down, and John Rice, if he was out there, his take on that would be to just give up on it way too early and pick up 4 yards on the ground. And it seems like in those situations with Timmy, he kind of dances around for 10-20 seconds, and then a play never develops, or he can't find it, and then it ends up with a sack or a pick. So like, neither of them are amazing. And I just think that I think JRP is better. I'm sorry, guys. I think it's pretty clear from what we've seen so far this season that JRP is better. I don't think it's a huge margin, but I just think that could almost serve as like the reset you need with what just happened, of like, okay, our guy is back. We're good. We're fine. We've got him. Let's go win this game. And then maybe that can get the ball rolling more than if you're sticking with Timmy, if that makes sense. Yeah. Now, it's not on Timmy. It's just kind of how things are going to feel,
No, yeah, I don't disagree. I just, there were things in the Baylor game that Timmy did that I was like, oh, if JRP was in, that wouldn't be like, it was especially the one where it was early in the game where he's running toward the goal line and there's a defender there and he kind of goes out of bounds. And some people are like, oh, like whatever, like why didn't he go? And then the next score on the next play, he took it in easily. But it's like, if that's JRP, he rams his head into the defender's chest to try to score a touchdown when it was like first down, I'm pretty sure. So,
there's no reason to ever talk about it, since the game ended up being a loss and it shouldn't have happened in the first place. But Timmy McClain's play on that 4th down is, I think, one of the most insane things I've ever seen any quarterback period do, not just a UCF quarterback do. Unfortunately, they lost, so we're never going to talk about it again. But yeah, I get all of that. I think that, and let me say too, like, say that JRP is back for Kansas, which I think is probably the way it seems like things are trending right now, barring practice just going really bad for him this week, and we just don't know what's going to happen there. Is the biggest takeaway from Timmy is, sure, they lost 2 games, but I feel way better about the 2024 quarterback situation than I did before we saw Timmy, because we had no idea what we had there. And now, especially with another year of improvement, I absolutely think he can come in and start next year. I'm sure the staff will still go bring in a transfer for competition, but I feel way better about what they have there.
There is plenty to work with there. And if you're one of those fans who's been, just complaining about Timmy or just criticizing him and you don't think there's plenty to work with in the future, you're lying to yourself, because there very clearly is. There's been mistakes, but there's always going to be mistakes with a quarterback who he hasn't played in 2 years. I mean, it's one of those things. And it's funny that we're doing that because JRP hadn't played quarterback. But it was switching position. It's just a different thing because he's in a completely different place. And
no, I'll explain to you why it was a different thing. And it's why I would get upset when people would say to me last year, JRP hasn't played in 2 years. I would say, that's great. There is another quarterback on the roster who has played quarterback within the last 2 years. And that's why I never assume cut him some slack. It's like, no, there's another option that's better. That's not the case anymore. So that's kind of how that goes.
All right. So we'll move on to the next one. And this one's pretty simple. It's just to trust your talent and not your gimmicks. I added the not your gimmicks.
I was going to say that wasn't in the outline, and you said it with a really hard.
I did put it in the outline. Read the outline; it's right there.
Oh, I'm reading my notes. I'm sorry.
Oh no, the outline says it because UCF it's, and I don't want to boil it down to the entire thing into this one play, but it's the fumble on third down where you take your quarterback off the field and you just have to run Wildcat on 3rd and 5. Like they do that. Would do Wild Bowser all the time last year. They've been doing Wild McDonald, some of Harvey, and they've been doing it in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, which I get. But you're doing it in 3rd and 5. Never mind the fact that he fumbled, which is just awful. But is he going to pick up? I guess he could kick a field goal after that anyway. So maybe that's why they did it. But 3rd and 5 to do that just feels like why? You're making things more difficult than you need to.
RJ Harvey just fumbled off a Wildcat play against Kansas State. So you're telling me with a straight face that was a safer play than Timmy handing off if you're playing for a field goal at that point?
Run another option. It's just I don't.
Has Timmy botched a single handoff?
I don't think so.
Yeah, and it's just, and some of the gimmicks have worked, but it's just they've been playing really freaking gimmicky this year, and some of it's gone well. The flea flicker went well. Some of it hasn't gone well, like RJ Harvey attempting 6 passes and not even getting the ball off most of the times. And then the Wildcat plays that feels like it takes him out of rhythm sometimes. And it's just, when I say trust your talent, I don't know how many times I can say it on this podcast. You guys are probably sick of it, but it's a huge takeaway from these 2 games is that UCF did assemble a Power 5 roster. They have Power 5 players. They don't have them every position, but they have them. And you compare that to someone like Cincinnati this year, who just, everyone they're playing, they just look terrible because they don't have that roster. It's, you guys have the talent. You did it. Good job. You had 2 years to assemble a team that could compete at the Power 5 level. You did it. You've assembled a team that could have the lead against the defending champions on the road in the 3rd quarter. You've assembled a team that could go up 35-7 in Baylor. Now you just need to do the little bit of extra work that keeps them from blowing both of those things. Trust that you have the talent. We don't need gimmicks. We don't need all this crazy window dressing stuff that just isn't necessary. Stop playing like you're underdogs.
I wanted to look it up because you said most of the Harvey passes end up with him not even getting the ball. If you're right, he's 0 for 1 this year. I feel
he's gotten one off.
I feel like they've run that play 3 or 4 times, maybe.
We're at 4. We're at 4 times. And the first 3 times, he never even got the ball. We only would know. It's so bad. And I just need to talk to someone who understands better. I can't even tell you what's supposed to happen on those plays. I have no idea what is supposed to occur. But they keep doing it. And like I said, some have worked. The flea flicker works. That was very cool. But then you go up against Baylor and you see Timmy just drop backs and slings it to Javon Baker downfield. It's do we need the flea flickers? Do we need the RJ passes? Do we even need the Wildcat plays? Wild Bowser worked in very specific scenarios because Bowser was freaking huge and was a freaking bruiser and was great in contact. And it would say, hey, we have a 3rd and 2 or a 4th and 1 or a 4th and 3. This is our best way to pick that up. Now they're just using Wild Harvey all the damn time. And you can't even tell me that this was their plan in the offseason because in the first game it was Wild McDonald and it wasn't really working. So they were well, let's just start doing that with Harvey. They don't need to do that.
This is where it would have benefited me to actually go back and watch the game. But it felt like against Kansas State, there were a lot of just Timmy was taking deep shots, which is what he's good at. Yeah. I feel like they didn't. They did it early. They had the long touchdown. I don't think they did it a ton after they went up. And I guess when you don't throw the ball deep, I guess when you go up by 21, but why not? I mean, it was working.
They sure as hell did in 2017 and 2018.
Yeah, you have talented receivers. They're going to get separation. You have a quarterback who has a good arm. It's like they went conservative too. That's the thing is I think they went conservative as another version of them not trusting the talent. Just let them do the things that got them to the lead.
If you want me to give you the main reason that I believe that UCF lost to Baylor, everything else aside, I think the main reason is that it got treated like an AAC game. And I saw it. I saw it in the press box. You saw it in the sidelines was when UCF, and I'm not even necessarily faulting the team for this because it's just what they do. But it's when they took that big lead, they heavily took their foot off the pedal. I mean, on the sideline, everyone's more relaxed. On the field, guys are just kind of playing more loose. And, it's just kind of like whatever. It's, we're going through the motions a little bit, which is what they've done 100 times before in the AAC. And the difference is that this isn't the AAC anymore. This was a team that had comparable talent to you. And you just can't do that in the Power Five. It's like a game is never over. You're always playing teams that can come back, especially in the Big 12. And it just felt like they didn't have that mentality. And I don't know if that's coaches or players or what. And I don't think it's a mistake they'll make again. But you want me to name one reason it felt like it just got treated like an AAC game.
Yeah, I'm with you. Number 4, settle on an offensive line, which I think they started to do. I believe they started the same offensive line against Baylor they did against K-State, but then Caden Kittler got hurt and went out in the second half, and Bula Schmidt stepped in at center. So I guess they gave us the answer that Bula was healthy enough to play, but they just decided on a different O-line. But I don't know what the injury to Kittler is, and I think Gus was kind of just saying, like, we'll see where he's at. Hopefully, if he's good enough to play, I start the same offensive line.
Yeah,
I starting the same guys.
We've said it 50 times, and I was encouraged to see that they seem to be trying to do that. Is you just have to decide now. We're past, this room is so deep. There are 10 guys, and I get it. And
they're never going to be elite.
Because
no collection of these guys is going to be elite. So stick with this one and just let them grow together.
And I think that it's easy to just, because of the way, we are as fans, it's easy to just look at a roster and be like, these are cogs in a larger machine and let's plug in this guy here, this works great. It's like when you look at Herb Hand and even Gus, it's like they love these players. They're working with them every single day. Herb Hand in particular seems like a guy that really gets close with his players. So I understand that it sucks when you have guys who are clearly good that you're basically going to have to alter the course of their lives by not playing them. And I understand the difficulty behind that, but it's about winning games. This is a business, and it's just at some point you have to say we have depth that's great for injuries, but we have to pick a group we've settled on. And I was encouraged to see them do that. But now if the Kittler injury, if that continues, it feels like that's been thrown out the window. And I, for one, hope Kittler's okay, because I said on the last podcast, I want to see Kittler start the rest of the year. I want to see if they can actually have the same center in place for multiple seasons for not the first time forever. They just had Matt Lee, but still, it just feels like there's been so much turnover on O-line, both over seasons, even in this season. It's like if they can just get one unit, even if you're not sure that it's the best version you have, we're almost halfway through the season. It's just time to stick with it.
It feels like the Drake Metcalf ship has sailed. It feels like,
man, I don't know what he did other than a couple false starts and putting the ball on the ground to piss off this coaching staff. But I mean, the fact that Kittler gets hurt and they're like Bula, I almost wonder if I have no idea, like total speculation, but like, is there something else going on there? Or are they really just that pissed about his mistakes?
I really don't know. I don't know, but yeah, it was interesting because like you would think just conventional wisdom would be, all right, this guy got hurt, let's go back to the guy who's starting just before him.
Right.
But I guess they were that unhappy or unsettled with having Metcalf in there at center. They said, all right, Bully, you're up. I mean, they had all 3 guys rotating in throughout camp, but I don't know. They obviously came to the decision of Metcalf at center and Bula at guard, unless I don't know how they're thinking about this, because unless they saw it and they're like, settled on the offensive line the way they have, and they're like, all right, we like the way they are at guard. They had Marcellus at left guard, I believe. Was it left guard? I don't know. They had Marcellus at one, and they had Lokahi at the other one. So it's like maybe they're like, all right, those are our 2 guards. And Bula, now that he's healthy, we've set our guards already. Now let's just get him in at center. That could be it.
That totally could be. Marcellus Marshall, who I think started the season at like right tackle, isn't that where he first started? Now he's at left guard. He's having a fun year.
That's difficult to do too. That is so it's something that the Bucks have had to do with a couple of their guys in the last couple of years, and it's like when they get drafted, they played on one side in college at tackle, and they're getting moved to the other side and playing guard, and it's like you have to relearn how you play the game, and I don't know how you do that in season. That's insane. I mean, I guess he's done both before, but
yeah. I mean, it is funny though. You said how, in fall camp, it was all 3 of those guys. And I remember it's sort of like laughing, like we were kind of like, it's so cute how they're like kind of like including Kittler in these quotes when people are asked about the center position. Now it's like, it's got probably Kittler appears to be the guy. Like, it's just sort of funny how little we always know about the way things are going to shake out.
Yeah. That's true. I think if they can get him out there for Kansas, and they just send the same O-line out there.
Just as much freaking consistency. I mean, it's like, because even now, like this unit we're almost halfway through the season, and that unit is a game and a half into playing in that formation. Like hopefully they can get some consistency there, because that will help so much.
Yeah. And the last thing we talk about here is kind of just something we've talked a little bit about already, but just figure out how to manage second halves and late game situations. Like, just you've got yourself in position to win these last 2 games. And I know the Kansas State one was always going to be tough because Kansas State has been there before and that it was a close game the whole way. So that's just maybe not going to fall your way. But when you get up 35-7, and even when it starts to unravel a little bit, and it's, what was it, 35 to, forget how they went for 2 twice, I think. So like, say it was 35 to 20 something. Like, you can't have that fumble in that situation. It's just like the small things. And Gus said, like, they had to make one play and they didn't make that play, no matter what that play was. Like, whether it was that play like that where they fumble and then they can't kick a field goal and go up by more, or it's, the fumble happens, but then the defense goes out there and needs to stop and doesn't get it. Like, they didn't do anything they needed to do, the one thing they needed to do to win the game. So, and I don't really know how you go out figuring that out, but I think it's just, if you make it happen once, you think, all right, like, now we know what to do down the stretch, and this is how we handle a game.
I mean, I think what scares me most is that we've seen the last 2 games is that it just feels like they don't respond well to adversity. It's the second that, especially feels like on offense. I know defense played quite the role in the loss against Baylor, but it just feels like that, okay, we screwed up. It's a tight game now. We're not sure if we have control here. And it feels like things just snowball and they can't do anything. Like an offense, both against Kansas State and against Baylor, that's functioning well all game. Crunch time hits, they just really can't do anything. We've seen that twice now. And that's I don't know what to pin that down to. I couldn't tell you. I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know if it's players. I don't know what it is, but that's something they just have to solve, because they were saying it all offseason. It's true. The Big 12 this is not the last single score game UCF's going to play this year. Nope. This is this conference, and it's going to be this conference for years to come. And if you can't nail down how to compete in those situations and how to hold on to leads or how to fight when things get tight, it's like, we're done. You're cooked at that point if you can't figure that out.
And I think it's a little bit of everything, but I think it starts with the coaches. I think they have to. It's the way they call the game down the stretch, especially when you have a lead like that. It's like you have to be able to know how you're going to call a game and manage the game down the stretch. And if you do that and you put your players in the right positions, then the players will do what they need to do, and then they'll get that experience of closing a game out. I feel like they just haven't figured that out yet, and it's like,
which against Boise,
everything,
but still, different quarterback and different situation. Yeah. But I mean, I think my other takeaway on that too is, like, I remember that what was the score at halftime of the Baylor game? Do you remember off the top of your head? UCF was in firm control, but it wasn't like it's over.
Of the Baylor game?
Yeah.
I don't remember. It was
whatever.
28 to
whatever it was. It was, UCF was winning by a lot. And I remember we were talking about the press box. I'm like, I would love to see UCF come out here and just take like 6 minutes off the clock, like just have a nice methodical drive. And they did exactly that. They came out, they played really well, took 7 minutes off the clock and scored. And I'm like, great, that's awesome. And that was the last good drive of the day. It was like, they just sort of, and
it was 28-7, and that drive made it 35-7. And that's the last time they scored.
And there you go. And it felt like they completely relaxed. And then suddenly it's a close game again, and the offense just can't function. And it was the same thing against Kansas State, where they have that, they take the lead. Defense has the penalty that gives Kansas State the ball, and then they score. And then the offense was just like, oh, we don't know what we're doing anymore. Like, just kind of unraveled. And it's just, I don't know if, like you said, I don't know if the coaches start calling the game differently, or they tighten up and the players tighten up. I don't know what's causing that, but they have, like, just figure out those late game situations. You've already blown this twice now. 2 games in a Big 12, 2 games into Big 12 play, and you've blown 2 second half leads. That can't keep happening.
And I don't want to say it's the scary part, but it's just the reality of it is, if you go out, you're going to go out there against Kansas, and if you're going to win the game, it's going to be close. You're going to have to. They're not going out there and blowing out Kansas.
I'd be very surprised.
It's going to be close. I could also see them getting blown out, so then they won't even have the chance of trying to figure that out on the stretch. But
don't even put that out.
If they're gonna win this game, it's gonna be, they have to figure out how to win in the second half, and we'll see if they can. I just there's no way I see them going out there and just not having to worry about that and winning 45-7. Like, I mean, even if they go up 35-7 at halftime again, they're gonna have to prove that they can hold on to a lead.
That's the thing. Now they've blown 35-7. It's like there's quite literally no lead they can take against Kansas, where I'm like, we can relax. Like, does not matter. And I don't know. Yeah. And that was kind of felt like part of the issue too, is it felt like Baylor, which, okay, that's another thing I wanted to say really quickly is this is a UCF podcast. We're all UCF fans. Like, I feel like sometimes we forget that UCF is not the center of the universe, and it's not all from UCF's perspective. Baylor played great that second half. There are not a lot of teams that can go down like that and never stop fighting. Like, most teams just kind of give in at that point. And UCF was checked out, and that was part of the problem. That's
the worrying part to me, is that UCF checked out, but Baylor clearly wasn't. So It was like, that was just a mismatch from there. It was like, this was going to happen because UCF was like, oh, yeah, we got this. And Baylor was like, no, let's just keep going.
And it was all the way up to that fumble. It was not until UCF fumbled and the scoop and score happened that they looked like they cared. It was like that Baylor at like an hour of real time at that point had been playing to win the game. And UCF, the scoop and score happens. They're like, oh, whoa, hold on a second. Like, this is
just like they looked up at the scoreboard and they're like, wait a minute.
Literally. And then from that
when
point,
did they get this close?
Baylor's been locked in for an hour. UCF's like, oh my God, and just rattled and trying to get back in the groove. And it's just
they went out and went 3 and out, I think, immediately after that too.
Yeah. Whatever lead UCF takes in the coming games, I hope that they get on the sideline. The coach is just like, remember Baylor? Remember what happened? Like, let's stick with this.
Yeah.
I don't think the season's over. I know that that's a popular take right now. And I do think it could be a little bit before UCF wins another game because them losing at Kansas and at Oklahoma is not that crazy. And that would put them at basically a month between wins. Would suck, but schedule was front loaded. There are wins at the back end of the schedule and things can be okay. We might be in for some rough times.
So in that scenario, say they lose the next 2 games and they're 3 and 4, Oklahoma State becomes the game that they cannot lose. Like, I mean, that's not even that one. It's because it's like you say about the other ones. Like, I don't want to keep banking on Cincinnati and Houston being wins because they could lose those games.
But basically,
I don't think they will.
You'd get to the point of say they lose to Kansas and Oklahoma, you get to the point where you have West Virginia, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Houston. And it's basically like, of those 5 games, you've got to find 3 wins.
Yeah.
And that is doable because Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, and Houston all look like wins right now. West Virginia's a home game. I always think UCF's capable of winning any home game. Texas Tech lost their quarterback and it's kind of an so it's like you just have to find them. And yeah, it would take a lot of heat off if they could win at Kansas. And I'm not entertaining the idea of them beating Oklahoma right now. I don't know what we're doing if we have that conversation. But yeah.
Me neither. We want to jump into a quick Kansas preview. I guess we went a little bit long on
Kansas preview. I don't know what you guys want us to say. We don't know which quarterback's playing for either team. I just watched UCF go up 35-7 and lose. I don't know. They'll play a football game and one of the 2 teams will win.
Kansas, I was going on at the same time as UCF, but Kansas kept it close with Texas early, I believe, without their quarterback, and then it was not close after that. But
from what I understand, even when it was close, it was more like Texas needs to wake up here versus like Kansas is fighting. Yeah, they played a pretty terrible game.
Gonna dive into all that when I start writing around the Big 12, which I've not gotten a head start on for the first time. Like the last few weeks, I've been able to do that like on a little bit Sunday night, but I just have not. Since Saturday was over, I was like, college football is just off to the side. I can't think about it anymore. But
I love college football more than like anything in the world. And when I got home from the Baylor game, I was all like, oh, I love it. It's a 3:30 game. I'll have time to watch college football. Couldn't do it. I watched like 20 minutes of Duke Notre Dame. And I was just like, I just can't do this.
Hey, when I got back to my hotel room, I watched some of the Duke Notre Dame game. I watched a little bit of TCU in West Virginia. And then I had Fresno State on for a second, but then I was just like, all right, just forget about it.
Yeah, but our friend Sarah, who by the way, who left when UCF was up 35-10, so Twitter's to be believed. She's a terrible fan. Crazy place we're in right now with Twitter. But she was like texting me updates of the game, like, oh my God, like Notre Dame just took the lead. And I just texted her, I was like, I just can't right now. Like all of college football is ruined for me. Like I just can't deal with this right now.
Yeah, so I don't know what you want us to really say about UCF and Kansas, but that's the thing is like I have us on here doing score predictions. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas State or Kansas, whichever one they're playing, the Jayhawks, they're 4-1. I don't know. Like, obviously, they have a very good quarterback in Daniels. If he plays, then I think that's a bad situation for UCF. If he doesn't play, they might have an opportunity there. They're scoring 33 points a game. UCF's defense has not yet shown that it can really stop anyone in the Power 5. They stopped Baylor for 3 quarters, so cool.
I made a score prediction, if you want to know it.
I made one too.
Kansas 34, UCF 28.
I went Kansas 38, UCF 31.
Okay, yeah, close.
I don't think UCF's going to get blown out because I just don't necessarily, unless the locker room disaster happens, then sure.
I don't think it will be. I don't know why. I have no reason to really say. Like, I don't think I have any reason to believe that, but I just feel like they're going to come out mad.
I hope so. I think I'm mad. But it is like I was saying this in the offseason too. It's like my favorite version of UCF is the angry version. And it's why I was getting frustrated. And I do believe in this, by the way. Like, this isn't just like talk to me. I truly think that UCF has historically played better when they feel doubted. And when all offseason people are like, UCF could be like a dark horse for the Big 12 title game, or, UCF's without a doubt going to be the best of the new 4. I'm just like, you know what? This is poison. Like, it's just like, it's like Saban says, it's rat poison. Like, it's I feel like they're just going to get complacent. And I don't know if that's what happened. I feel like it's a leap to say it is, but I do when you're doubted, it just fuels you in a different way in sports. And hopefully they feel doubted right now. They should, because they deserve to be doubted. And maybe they'll be able to pull off a win and we can all have a sigh of relief for literally the first time in a week. Would be cool.
What if they just went out? What if they do?
What if I win the Powerball?
It'd be cool.
Yeah.
Be nice. Yeah, let's jump into the football news.
You know what, Bailey? Even if they win out, I'm still never going to forgive the staff for the Baylor game. Like, they could literally win out and go 10-2. I will never get over the Baylor game. Does not matter.
And they'll go 10-2. Wow, it could have been 11-1. They should have been 11-1.
Okay, let's live in fantasy land for a second, where I don't know, something clicks, crazy things happen. Timmy McClain just, I don't know, they win out. It's not going to happen, but say it does happen. I will literally be sitting here on this podcast and saying they'd be going to the college football playoff right now if they haven't blown a 35-7 lead to Baylor. Like, it doesn't matter. I will never get over that for the rest of my life.
That's crazy. Football news. There's just a couple of NFL things. Gabe Davis, real football player. He has scored a touchdown in 3 straight games for the Bills. And Brandon Johnson has 3 touchdowns with the Broncos. He scored a touchdown in the game against the Bears. So two former UCF receivers. Both, I think 3 touchdowns in 3 games. I think that means Davis has 3 in the season. I don't think he scored the first game. But yeah, that's good to see. I like that. Game of the week. UCF women's soccer at 8-3. They split their games in Oklahoma last week. They lost to a close one. It was 2-1, maybe. It was late against Oklahoma State, and they came back and beat Oklahoma. So they're 8-3. I think in RPI they're up in the 30s, if I'm not mistaken. They take on Texas, who's 8-3-2 this Thursday at 5:30. It's UCF's space game, so be on the lookout for their space kits on Thursday afternoon. With that, we'll get into tweet of the week, and I am dreading this.
Tweet of the week. So tweet of the week is being assigned to all of UCF Twitter. We're all collectively, I'm including myself, are earning tweet of the week. I can't believe, I can almost barely put into words how beyond ridiculous it is that UCF blew a 35-7 lead in their Big 12 home opener to lose. And the only discussion on social media for UCF fans has been, why wasn't the student section full at kickoff? Why did the fans leave early? We have to do something about this. And I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm going to try to keep this brief, but we'll do the best I can. First off, I really am embarrassed for all of you for that this is the conversation we're having. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, it's not the point for UCF to lose a game like that, and for that to somehow be what the discourse about is just a bad look. And it's also just second, I'm so sick of this. Honestly, do you remember, Bailey, one of the first things you ever wrote for Night Sports Now was a column about how fans have to stop blaming the students for attendance problems. Do you remember that?
Not bad. Now you say that, but I didn't remember that.
It's whenever there is an empty seat in the stadium, the frickin' alumni are like, it's the students. It's their fault. Even though they were all students at one point and know that that's just not how it goes. So I want to go through a few points of this because I'm going back and forth. And let me just flat out say, if you're in the camp on Twitter where you're like, I'm really mad at the students, I'm really mad at attendance, blah, blah, blah. This isn't a debate. You're wrong. You're misinformed. You're wrong. And you need to stop. It's time to move on. It's been 2 days and I'm genuinely embarrassed for you as a person that you will not let this go, that you watch your team lose a game like that and you're mad at the students. So I just want to talk about a few things. First one is it was family weekend. That was not a good game to be family weekend. I don't totally know why that was the case, but I don't know if you guys just didn't go to college. Maybe you're t-shirt fans. I don't know. But when it's family weekend, parents are in town. Parents aren't going to stick there for a whole blowout. A lot of the students either weren't in the stands because they're out with their parents or they left early to go get dinner with their parents or whatever. It was a blowout. Family weekend is always kind of worse on attendance. I mean, do the math in your head. Like, it doesn't make sense that there were more students at the Villanova game than the Baylor game. And again, UCF has a huge student section. It's not like no one showed up. It was mostly full.
Real quick.
Go for it.
Family weekend, I know people always say, family weekend always sells out. I'm like, yeah, it's true, because a lot of families, they do come and they want to put the football game as part of their weekend. But a lot of families also don't. There are a lot of students on campus, and some students that maybe you're just like, yeah, I'll go to the game. Maybe their families were coming into town. They're like, we don't have the money to do all the game and everything because tickets were expensive. So it's like that's part of it too, where it's like not. And these people that are complaining about it are, if you're someone who talks about UCF constantly on Twitter, both of us. But if you're somebody that does that, you're a diehard UCF fan. Not every student that shows up to a game is a diehard fan. They're not going to stay if it's a 35-7 game. Do I wish it would have been full the whole game? Sure. But that's just not a reality. It's not going to happen.
My issue with that, and you nailed it on the head as well, as I'm going to get into next, is if you're listening to this podcast, you're a diehard fan. That stadium is not full of diehard fans. No college football stadium is. There aren't enough diehard fans to make that the case. The fans who get pissed when fans leave a 90-degree weather game once the game's over, once it's a blowout, are insane. The problem is that UCF took a game that was over and made it a loss, which is impossible. And my issue is when people get all mad at the fans that I don't know what I have to say to get you guys to understand this is not a UCF thing. At every single goddamn stadium in the country, all 130 freaking 3 of them, when the game is over, when the home team is winning by a bunch of touchdowns, the stadium empties. You've watched it happen for every freaking UCF game since the bounce house is open. And somehow you just can't comprehend that people would not want to sit there in the heat and watch a game that's over where teams are just handing the ball off and nothing's happening. You're lunatics. Not everyone in the world thinks UCF is the most important thing. I can say that as a person who thinks UCF is the most important thing.
And it's just the conversation is like, oh, like you weren't there, like UCF, like they needed the atmosphere, like down the stretch. It's like, that's UCF's fault. They should not have needed the fans to be there at the end. Like, yeah, cool. If they would have been there and been there loud the whole time and held on late because, oh, wow, it was such a great atmosphere down the stretch and the place came alive. Sure, cool. But they shouldn't have been in that position. When it's 35-7, it shouldn't matter.
Lunatic behavior to think that stadium needs to stay full for games that are over, even though there is no school in the country that does that. I'm going to tell you a thing right now.
Didn't Saban he called out the fans or the students at one point a couple years ago?
So a couple years ago,
Alabama.
Saban went on this whole campaign about how they need to be checking which students are leaving early and taking their tickets and stuff, because Alabama would play a team and beat them by 30 and everyone's gone by halftime. At Alabama, the greatest dynasty in the history of the sport. It's just, guys, you have to wrap your heads around this at some point. I'll tell you a personal thing. The first ever UCF game I attended as a student, I left early. It was the 2015. It was the FIU game. It was a close game. I was very excited to be there. I'd been a UCF fan my whole life. I went with a group of people who I didn't know. So it was my college roommates who I just met, where it's like late in the third quarter. It's getting late. They're like, we want to go get dinner. We're all going to leave and go get dinner. And I was kind of like, I guess, I'm an 18-year-old and peer pressure. I guess I'm leaving you guys. That's what being a student is like. The world doesn't, it's like, you guys have to understand this at some point. So I'm going to try to keep going because I have a few more things to say. Several people reply to me because I've tweeted a few times. I was like, I cannot believe that we just saw one of the most embarrassing losses in UCF history. And the narrative is, how could the students have done this? And more than a few people replied to me and said, well, we can't control what the coaching staff does, but this is something that we can control. No, it isn't. What do you think you're going to tweet? Do you think you're going to post something that 5,000 students are all going to see and go, wow, they make a valid point. I think the next time UCF's up by 30 points, I'm going to stick around and see what happens. You can't control that any more than you can control what play call Hinshaw or Gus or whoever's calling plays decides to run a game. And now I have one more thing. We're not even getting to that. One more thing I want to say on this topic is that because UCF Twitter, being the enlightened group that it is, have now moved into solutions. They're like, well, let's fix the problem. Let's figure out. And everyone's jumped on the bandwagon of, I've got the answer. We need to make the student section smaller. We need to not let students in. Couple thoughts on this. First off, how about showing the students a little bit of sympathy, since a whole bunch of them got turned away for the Kent State game and it became a giant Twitter mess because not all of them knew that was an option, since they pay student fees. And then at the Villanova game, they
very high student fees.
They rushed the other gates because UCF screwed up the line so bad students couldn't get in, and now we're mad at them that they didn't show up for the next game after that. So let me give you a stat for the folks who want to make the student section smaller and kick students out. Let me tell you this. UCF 2022 fiscal year, UCF Athletics collected $23.2 million in student fees. That is money students pay as part of their tuition that goes directly to athletics, made up nearly a quarter of UCF Athletics revenue. UCF Athletics, while charging their students more than any other school in the Big 12, in fact, most of the schools don't charge their students anything for athletics, they also let the smallest percentage of their student body into the stadium. Did you know that? Room for 20%. Baylor has room for half of their students in their stadium. So for you losers to say that they need to kick students out of the game because you're mad that the students that get treated like crap and already have to pay a bunch of money and aren't guaranteed a spot in the game and get turned away, that, oh, they left while UCF was up 35-7 on family weekend. All of you are losers. I'm sorry. It's the dumbest thing any of you have ever done on this app. And we're coming off last week when you threw a fit that they asked the fans to wear white. And we're coming off 2 weeks where you want the DJ fired because they didn't play Zombie Nation. I'm done with this fan base. I'm so over it. It's just, what's it going to be next week, guys? Like, actually clue me, and I'm curious. What are we picking next week? The popcorn wasn't salty enough. Like, what are we going for? Like, give me a heads up so I can get in the mental headspace, whatever nonsense you're going to be tweeting about, please.
That was really good. That was well done. I don't know. I don't want to prolong it, but I also want to bring up the other solution that people are saying, where it's like, make the students pay for tickets. All right, then none of them are going to show up.
They do pay for tickets.
They do. The student fees they pay are some of the highest. I don't remember what the stat is or whatever, but they pay very high student fees and an athletic fee. That's why they get in for free. And they're like, oh, we'll just make them pay for tickets. First of all, no, that's insane. Second of all, if you want to do that, expect fewer of them to show up. They're college kids.
I just can't believe in literally 3 home games, we went from huge mess where students couldn't get in for the Kent State game and then ended up having to try to get in the other gates because there was so much demand and they turned a bunch of students away, to 3 weeks later, the fan base is like, students can go to hell. student sections weren't completely full. And then they left.
Cut one of the end zones. Cut one of the end zones out. That's what they said. Cut one. They can only one end zone. I saw a lot of that. That was just
crazy. So Jimmy Skiles now just prolonged this even more. I wonder how much of our listeners we've blacklisted forever with this, but I'm just so angry about it. I can't help it. So Jimmy Skiles posted an interesting thing about, because a bunch of people were like, the mistake was adding the other end zone, and that's the problem. And he posted logic, which is, I know, can be tough sometimes for fans to deal with. And he said that they sent out a student survey a couple years ago, and they did that to ask students why they leave the games early. So almost like UCF has tried to deal with this, guys. I know, crazy. You guys act like UCF just sits around and is like, we have problems, we don't care. And the number one reason that fans cited that they left early was because they don't get good seats and they don't feel like they're a part of the game. They also all said the main thing that would make them stay longer is if they were closer to the field. So UCF said, okay, we're going to have the exact same number of student seats, but we're going to make the bottom of both end zones student seating so that way more, thousands more students will get to sit close to the action. And that's why it happened. So for people being like, why did you add all these seats? They didn't. They just redistributed them to be better seats, and that's helped student attendance. If your guys' mission in life, or if your barometer for the students is that they're not allowed to leave until the clock hits 0, then you are insane. I also love the people who, there was one guy in particular, I'm not going to say, I don't even remember what their handle was, who replied to me and said, I thought the student attendance was pathetic. It looked terrible on my TV. I clicked the guy and I was like, maybe he lives out of town. Clicked his profile, lives in Orlando. I'm done. I just, it's like, I don't even know what to say. It's just, you just see if Twitter's getting dumber by the week, man. And I'm contributing to it. I'm tweeting dumb stuff too. I got all up in it. And it's just,
I've stayed out of this one.
Oh,
I think I sarcastically tweeted about the uniform thing last week, because I think I posted the one thing and I said, I can't believe this is what everyone's talking about. And then I realized that I was talking about it too. And I was like, and you guys have made me talk about this and I'm mad about it.
But that's
this time I'm staying out of the student section talk, and I don't care. I don't even want to. The fact we're doing this podcast is a miracle. I don't even want to think or talk about you at UCF for, I don't know, as long as possible.
I just did a whole rant of, I'm like, I can't believe that all we're doing is talking about the students. I've tweeted like 15 times about the whole student attendance fight, but it's just
good.
Guys, I get that you have to put your anger somewhere. Putting it on the students is crazy. Put it on the coaching staff. Put it on blowing a 35-7 lead. Don't put it on why weren't the students there for a blowout. They're never going to be. They shouldn't be. Let it go. All right. Well, on that note, the 12 of you who will be back to listen next week after that.
That might have been the longest tweet of the week segment we've ever done, but
been a minute.
It was. Yeah. I think it was worth it. But yeah, thanks for listening to that and for this whole podcast. We tried to figure out and navigate through what has been a bad few days. But keep leaving us your 5-star reviews. We need some questions, so send in your questions with your 5-star reviews. I was going to say we will be back Saturday after the Kansas game. Christian will be back in some form of a post-game podcast after the game against Kansas. It's the Bucks bye week, so I'm going on vacation. So sue me. Now everyone, everyone on Twitter is going to be mad at the students. Now they're going to be mad at me. They're like, wow, he's not even going to be here for the game. At this game that's in Kansas. Of
the people who host this podcast, I don't think you're the one folks are going to be mad at after this episode. So I think you're probably okay.
I wouldn't be surprised with this fan base. I'm going to be like, can't believe you're going on a vacation during UCF's bye week. Your vacation should have been, or not UCF's bye week, during the Bucks bye week. During UCF season, you should have been going to Kansas. You should be doing your vacation in Lawrence.
Actually, given how they just reacted to UCF blowing a 35-7 lead and getting mad at the fans, I'm going to scream at them like that, and they're going to go, wow, Bailey sucks. Like, that's
well, there was the one guy that one time that left a review that was like, Christian has like some of them, like, I forgot, he's like some about, no, he said that I was like one of the whiniest people ever, and you're like, I'm pretty sure that was meant for me.
Yeah, I think he must have got our names mixed up, because he was like, I like Christian's measured takes, but Bailey just whines nonstop, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like our podcast. Like, yeah. I don't know.
Maybe it is.
We actually started we had a whole conversation, because we were in Memphis, I think, when that got dropped last year, and I was like, do we need to like call each other by our names more on the podcast so like people know who we are?
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, well, Bailey, it's been great.
It has been good, Christian. It's been good. It's been great. It's been good. But yeah, so Christian will be back on Saturday after the game against Kansas. Hopefully he has a very happy post-game podcast to do.
It's going to be 20 minutes of me crying.
I hope not.
It's not even analysis. I'm literally just going to cry into a mic and then post it.
And some sickos like 250 sickos will listen to it like right away as soon as it drops. You'll tweet
episode 165.
I just cried into a microphone. Here it is, and everyone's gonna be like, "Yes."
I'll bill it as like what ASMR. I'll be like just 20 minutes of crying noises on a loop.
All right. So Christian will be back on Saturday, and then I'll be back next week to talk about whatever mess is going on in the UCF community. But until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at ByCA Simmons, and at Night Sports Now. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.